Operation Iron 2. Coming soon.
I've recently received a couple of requests for information on an ingredient that's showing up in a lot of food supplements. The ingredient specifically is called agmatine. Now, let's first discuss what is agmatine. Agmatine is a metabolite of the amino acid L-arginine. Without going into complex chemistry, which would lose about 99% of the people looking at this video, I'll just say that it's a decarboxylated form of arginine. You don't have to know what that means. It just means that it's arginine. It's the amino acid arginine acted on by a carboxylase enzyme that converts it into agmatine. It's made in the human body. It's also found in a couple of natural foods. Let's see, what's the foods that's found in? Well, I'll discuss that in a minute. It's found in beer and wine, if I remember correctly, and very, very low amounts. Now, why is it found in the food supplements? Why is it showing up in food supplements? It's showing up in food supplements because it's promoted to be kind of like a super arginine. It's touted to boost nitric oxide much more effectively than arginine, which is very humorous to anybody who ever looks at the medical literature that's been published about agmatine, because one of the things that agmatine does is it inhibits all three of the no-converting enzymes. In other words, it blocks the enzymes that convert arginine into nitric oxide. Now, admittedly, the one that does this in the blood vessels is called endothelial nitric oxide synthetase. Again, you don't have to remember that. But it takes really large amounts of agmatine to block this particular enzyme. So, it's not really relevant to what's found in supplements, because the amount in supplements is kind of tiny compared to the amount that would actually block the no enzymes. But the mere fact that a substance that's touted to increase nitric oxide actually works by inhibiting the synthesis of nitric oxide is humorous to me. Now, you might be saying at this point, well, I've read in the ads about agmatine that it increases blood circulation. Doesn't nitric oxide do that? Yes, nitric oxide does that, and agmatine also does that, but it doesn't do it by working with the NO enzymes. It does it through an alternate pathway, and it's important to note at this point, very important to note, and put this in capital letters, almost all the research that has been published about agmatine has involved animal research, and in most of the studies, the form of agmatine used was injected into the animals. There's been only one study of humans with agmatine, and that had nothing to do with measuring nitric oxide production. What it did was kind of like examine the effects of agmatine on what they call neuropathic pain, which is a type of pain that emanates from actual damage to nerves. And this study found that agmatine does have potential to treat neuropathic pain. Now, you might be thinking at this point, well, wait a minute. If it's included in pre-workout food supplements and it lowers the pain threat, it blocks or blunts pain, wouldn't that allow me to train harder? The answer to that is no, because paradoxically, when you take the amounts of agmatine found in food supplements, it actually increases the sensation of pain. So it would make training harder, not easier. I find the reason I'm laughing is because all these internet ads and articles about agmatine all say the opposite. I mean, they're just total BS. It's just laughable, right? Okay, so anyway, some other studies show that, again, this is like preliminary studies with animals. Agmatine does seem to have an ability to treat what they call lumbosacral pain, which in simple English means lower back pain. There's no evidence for this in humans, but I will say at this point that agmatine does show good potential as a possible pain reliever, but it hasn't really been tested in humans. But the pathways for doing so, reducing pain, they have shown that agmatine does affect that. But again, there's no real proof of it. It's only a hypothesis right now. Another thing they've noticed is that if you provide agmatine with substances known to lower pain, such as opioids, those type of drugs, the agmatine actually increases the analgesic or pain-lowering effects of other drugs. But when it's used alone, without opioids or these other pain-killing drugs, it doesn't really do anything as far as that goes. Agmatine is not really a new substance. It was actually discovered way back in 1910. But similarly to aspirin, which also was discovered I think it was discovered around the turn of the 20th century, it took 100 years for researchers to figure out how aspirin actually worked. The same goes for agmatine. They discovered it way back in 1910, but it wasn't until recent years that they actually figured out what this stuff does. So that's a kind of interesting thing. As I said, it's found naturally in beer, wine, and fish, but the amount found in these foods is very tiny. It's not going to really have any effect. Agmatine also could be used to treat alcohol withdrawal syndromes. For example, people that get off alcohol, sometimes they slip into this serious complication called deliria tremens, which can actually kill them. Agmatine might have an effect in blocking that. Once again, I'm going to keep emphasizing this. This has been shown in animals. There's no human data to prove this. Now, because agmatine actually competes in the production, in the actual synthesis of nitric oxide, it actually kind of blunts it. It can be useful in the treatment of, for example, if you have a stroke, a lot of the brain damage caused by having a stroke is caused by an excessive release of nitric oxide in the brain. People don't realize nitric oxide, besides dilating blood vessels, it's also what they call a free radical. And what that means is it can actually damage cells when it's released in greater than normal amounts. And in the brain, there's a huge release of nitric oxide that damages the neurons and causes a lot of the damage that you get when you get a stroke. There's another amino acid that's involved in that too called glutamate, but that's another story. I'm not going to get into that. Also, another thing to consider about agmatine is that it increases the activity of a substance called nuclear factor kappa B. And it's a little technical, I understand, using these terms, but what is it? I'll just tell you what nuclear factor kappa B does. It's a key regulator of systemic inflammation. In other words, sometimes inflammation is good in the sense that it helps to prevent the spread of disease. But in other cases, out-of-control systemic inflammation is associated with the onset of cancer, cardiovascular disease, brain disease, and other diseases. Agmatine stimulates nuclear factor kappa B, which theoretically means if you have any kind of pre-existing inflammatory condition, agmatine might potentiate it or make it worse because of its effect on this nuclear factor kappa B. The animal studies also show that agmatine could be a very effective antidepressant, which is very interesting because if this turns out to be true in humans, it could possibly replace or, let's say, supplement existing antidepressant drugs. Antidepressant drugs have a lot of potential side effects. The good thing about agmatine, it has virtually none. It's actually pretty safe. Another problem with the using agmatine, it's all usually, from what I've seen, a lot of times it's incorporated in these pre-workout supplements, again, with the notion of it being a nitric oxide booster that increases blood circulation. But, these same pre-workout supplements also contain other amino acids, including arginine and others. The problem with that is when you ingest agmatine with other amino acids, it kind of blocks the effects of agmatine, so you neutralize it. So including agmatine in a multi let's say, ingredient formula is a waste of money. I mean, agmatine, it won't do anything. And agmatine also, it doesn't last very long in the blood. It only lasts about maybe 20 minutes, and then it's broken down. But strangely, in other organs such as the kidneys and the brain, it can last up to 12 hours. I'm sorry, 24 hours. This is a mystery that nobody's been able to figure out, why it kind of lasts so little in the blood, but lasts longer in other organs. And in the brain, agmatine acts as a neurotransmitter, and a lot of the reason why it works as an antidepressant and has other brain effects is it can block the activity of certain brain receptors that are involved in depression. Now, as far as the safety goes, one study showed that a dose of 2,670 milligrams of a day of agmatine, when ingested orally, it was used in that study I mentioned, the only human study, to test the effects of agmatine on neurogenic pain. And this study actually lasted 5 years, and they found no side effects with that dose of agmatine. The estimated effective human dose, you don't have to take that much, is about 1 gram a day. But again, if you take it with other proteins or amino acids, you're not going to get much of an effect of agmatine. Agmatine tends to be expensive. So, the products that contain it also tend to be expensive. And as with many other substances, it's not very expensive to produce agmatine, but, the supplement companies kind of, screw you by charging you more and making you believe this is some sort of exotic, expensive ingredient when it isn't. What I'd strongly advise you to do is all these articles, if you do a Google search and you want further information on agmatine, I'd be very, very careful about reading these articles, because in preparation for this video, I read about 10 articles on the web on agmatine, and every single one of them had bullshit information. It was completely inaccurate. And of course, the commonality among these sites is all of them were associated with companies that sold products that contain agmatine. So, I mean, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to see what's going on there. By the way, if you want the best information, in-depth information on nutrition, where I expose the nonsense such as the stuff about agmatine and other supplements, I'll save you a lot of money. So you want information on nutrition, food supplements, exercise science, anti-aging, hormonal therapy, ergogenic aids, fat loss research. Subscribe today to my Applied Metabolics newsletter, www.appliedmetabolics.com. If you're not subscribing to this, you're missing a ton of information you're not going to get anywhere else. You're wasting your money on junk supplements. You're wasting your time in the gym doing terrible exercise routines and exercises. I could save you the trouble. I'm incorporating all of my over 50 years of training experience and knowledge and study into this newsletter. And it's very in-depth. It's 40 to 50 pages every month. You will learn something every issue, I guarantee you. And if you want the best friend you'll ever have in your life, go to your nearest shelter, adopt a dog. There is no creature on earth more loyal and dedicated and loving than a dog. And I'm talking any dog, any breed. They're the best. I only wish that dogs could live a lot longer than they do, because as far as I'm concerned, these creatures are like angels on earth. I'm telling you. Anyway, take care and have a good day.